And we are alive now, but we still have 0 viewers. Welcome to the Service Design Drinks. We're still waiting a bit, some more few minutes until you can start. Martin, can you check if I'm appearing there? Yeah, we still have a few minutes until we start broadcasting. Um, yeah. And the night's really great. You can see a lot of people here tonight. People is arriving. We're gonna have a really great night tonight. Thank you for joining us today. Tonight we're gonna have Manuel Grossman, that is still preparing himself, and we're gonna start in 3 minutes.
Habt ihr Post-its? Ja. Weil wir würden gerne für das Education Duration, wir brauchen wahrscheinlich nicht
If you are with us right now, just wait more a few minutes, and we're gonna be online in 3 minutes. If you have any questions, don't forget to check if you are logged in, and you can use the app questions in the interface of the Hangout to drop us questions. I have a first question for you guys. Can you hear me perfectly? Is everything fine? Can you hear me?
Sehr gut.
Cool. Christian, can you tell the people there in the house where are we? Martin, is that good?
It's fine.
Okay. How does it look like? Yeah. Hi. Can you tell like where are we and why this place is happening here? What's happening here tonight? And who are you?
So much questions. Yeah. My name is Christian. I'm a history teacher here at that school and assistant of head of school. And this is a school called Evangelische Schule Berlin Zentrum. This is a very special school in a very special time. We're doing a lot of wonderful things here. And what we do here is rethinking education. So we have a lot of learning settings and learning arrangements here, which are quite different from regular schools. Our students learn in so-called learning offices. We have a project here called The Challenge. So our students go out 3 weeks out of Berlin with €150 in their pockets, and they can do anything they want, but it should be a challenge for them. So our foundations of the school is self-management, but also coming into action. So, we don't need much more knowledge. Of course, we always need knowledge, but not much more knowledge, but we also need action and to change the world. And that's what we're doing here. And this is what we stand for. And that's why we are hosting service design drinks here. And we are quite honored to have you here.
Thank you, Christian. If you have any question for Christian about the school, about the environment, just drop a question and he's gonna answer you afterwards.
And he will catch me at some point. So
exactly.
Just drag me in front of the camera and say, Christian.
Thank you, mate. Okay. Hello, hello, son. Check if you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, welcome everyone. I don't think it's on.
No, that's for the internet.
Ah, okay. It's only for the internet. I have to speak up anyway. Yeah, this is an experiment actually,
Both.
because we are live streaming this Service Design Drinks edition. And if it works well, we might try it out another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. A very warm welcome to the first edition of Service Design Drinks in 2015. I've seen a couple of regular faces. I'm not sure if there's many new people. Can you raise your hand if this is your first Service Design Drinks? Woo! Happy to have you here. So I'm just briefly say a few words about the format. So basically what we try to do is get people who are interested in service design together for a nice after work meeting, and we mostly have a topic for each service design drinks. And today it's education, and there will be a short input and a short exercise. So in case you're a little tired after work, we'll get you moving again. And then there's a lot of time for mingling, chats, and drinks, and that's about it.
You want to say who we are?
Yes. Okay, so this is the first drinks in 2015, but we've been actually running the service design drinks for the last 5 years in Berlin. And us, this is Service Design Berlin. Manuel, Olga, Martin, Mauro, and myself, Katrin. Yeah, so if you want to know more about the things that we do besides the drinks, yeah, just come to us, talk to us. What? Sorry. Yeah, we'll be here all evening. Okay. And I think what we want to know now is where we actually are, because another special feature about the drinks is we move around. So every drinks is in a different location. Last time we were at Volkswagen Innovation Space, and today we are at Evangelische Schule, and Christian might say a few words about it.
This is really weird. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this place here, which is called Evangelische Schule Berlin Zentrum. We are a school here, a private school, which is, I would say, a very special school in a very special time regarding education. The school tries to do things differently and try to develop a different learning culture. And we're doing this with different learning formats. For example, our students, they learn in so-called learning offices. They do it by themselves. They choose every day what they're learning. And we have a lot of project teaching here. Also, we got a project which is called The Challenge. That means that our students go out for 3 weeks with 150 euros in their pockets, and they can do whatever they want. It should be a challenge. By the way, we're always looking for people who accompany our students on their challenges. So if anybody's here who wants to do a challenge from the 1st to the 18th of September, just drop a line here and or give me a call or leave your mark at the contact list, which is actually there at the doors besides her. So this school is about learning not only to have knowledge, but also learning to act. And this is why we have this very special connection to design thinking. We had several projects running here regarding design thinking. And for now, we have something new going on. It's the so-called Education Innovation Lab, and Elias will say something about that. But just before, I get a little present for you. But because this school is about acting, not only about, gaining new knowledge and gaining new experiences, but about changing the world and making it a better place. I get this small card here. All our students who start the school get this small Mutkarte. Mut means courage. So this is what education is all about. It's about courage to go out and try out new things. So I hope this evening will be under this motto. And I'm glad to have you here. And now I want to say hi to Elias and have a wonderful evening.
Hello, good evening. I really need this courage card for this night. So we are here to start something what we think which is not existing yet in the world. We create an education innovation lab directly in a school, and we want to redesign the whole education journey from starting children in schools to lifelong learners. And what we have here in this school is that we have here a new culture of learners. We have here a lot of teachers who now since 8 years trying out new ways to find new ways for education. And we have a lot of students, and I can say for myself, if I saw this students the first time, if I had the first time the project with students here, I was so impressed by how confident they are, how confident they are also about their longings, who they want to be in a world like this. And we think we have a lot of knowledge here, and we have a lot of people here who really want to make a difference. And so this is why we decided to create an innovation lab directly based here at this school. It's in the 3rd floor. After the whole drinks, all the people who are interested can come and watch the empty rooms, because we are just starting now to create a space which invites invitation. Yeah, and I can also say that we need a lot of help. We need a lot of people who are experienced in creating those kind of innovation labs, in being experienced service designers, and who really want to work on projects which maybe are kind of fuzzy, because this whole education scene is kind of not really disrupted by the design area, but we think there's a huge opportunity to really make a change. And therefore, we also want you invite, if you are interested in what we are doing with those labs, please also feel free to leave your contacts over there at the wall. Okay, thanks.
Want to say something about the double? Oh yeah, today is our very first broadcasting, so right now the whole world is watching us, and if you sleep during the presentation, you can actually catch up afterwards, watch on YouTube. So don't leave. So hello internet, I hope you enjoy it. That's it pretty much. Thank you. So now it's you. I say, yeah, I say you when you are being recorded. Okay.
Do we need this as well?
Yeah, this is for talking to them.
Okay. This is for talking to you, and there's only a pocket for talking to you. Now, a bit faster. And that's a big challenge that we see people who are looking at the education space. And the question is, how can we actually bridge that gap? How can we enable school to kind of catch up with the real world? Thinking about real world, just a few examples from students' reality. When you think about these services that are out there that were not made for education, thinking about YouTube, this is basically how students nowadays learn a lot. Like, I still go to Google and they Google things if I want to find out. Students, they go to YouTube and they watch videos on how things work. Also, students, they share homework via WhatsApp. If you talk to teachers, they will tell you that. And I recently read an article which I found really interesting, is that airdrop in at least some schools is becoming really, really important, because that's how students exchange content. So if they want to exchange pictures or anything, they just do it via airdrop in the classroom, if there's Wi-Fi. Because you don't need to sign in, you don't have to have someone's email address, you just send it to whoever is there. Of course, that's not happening at every school. These are some tendencies that we see that what students are doing when they're not at school. And now, looking at how does life at school actually look like, I want to quote somebody that I know from my time as a student when I was at school. It's a friend of mine who's now a teacher in Hamburg, and he said something like this. He said, "Last week I was asked for help by a colleague since the interactive whiteboard was broken. The problem? The cable was loose." It's when you hear that first, I think, funny, teachers, they don't really know what's happening. It's actually a problem. It's not to blame the teachers that they don't know how technology works. It's actually, it's a big challenge for them. You know, things are changing quite rapidly, quite fast, and it can be very small things that show us that technology something doesn't work or cannot really be integrated, and that's a problem for that. That's a reason for that. Looking at some examples of how school life looks like, this is one example that also my friend gave me. This is a real-world example of work that happens in nowadays schools, done by people who are about to graduate. to start studying. In Germany, we call this a Wandzeitung, like a wall newspaper. And he said his students, what they say is, this kind of wall newspaper, I don't ever have to do it at university. I will never be asked to do that at any job, but I have to do it in order to graduate. What's the deal here? And then what I found even more interesting is when you look at it, this text here is not handwritten. It's digital text. It's actually a text further away. Okay, it's actually a text like this. Okay. Do I need it just for them to hear me? Yeah. Okay. Who's in the back? Who can hear me? Perfect. All right. Okay. All right. So what he said actually is, what's interesting is that this text is actually text from Wikipedia, text that the students copied, then they put it into a digital document, they printed it out, then they cut it out with scissors, and they glued it on this kind of wallpaper here. So that kind of shows how absurd this learning situation, the learning environment sometimes is. Another thing that was supposed to be modern are these so-called computer rooms or computer labs. So who at home has a computer lab, a designated room where you go to work with the computer? Not very many. Actually, in this room, nobody. And that's the problem at school as well, that when it was introduced, it was very new and it was great that we had computers at schools, but the real life is moving much faster, and it's just not what we need to learn. It's not what we need to prepare for real life. And at many schools, actually, we see something like this. This is a learning area. There are no mobile phones allowed, which of course is happening for various reasons. But if you think of yourself and how you go through your daily life, mobile phones are an important part of our daily lives, not just because we want to go on Facebook or something, but it's we use it for daily tasks, like finding the next train that I want to go to, finding that train that's coming so that I can go somewhere. I'm talking to people, I'm exchanging information. That's what students should learn. That's what they should be enabled to do at school. So are students way ahead of their teachers and of school reality then, because they use all these great services and the school is so old school? There's actually a study that recently came out in November in 2014. It's called the International Computer and Information Literacy Study. And the subtitle was Preparing for Life in a Digital Age. So computer literacy basically means, am I able to communicate with the computer? Am I able to use it? And also, am I able to reflect the information that I'm seeing on the internet using computers? And that study had some interesting facts that I would like to share with you. What literacy means, I just told you, basically. So the student at this study looked at 60,000 students, actually, in 21 countries. And what's interesting is they didn't only look at just at students, but also at the teachers, and how do actually teachers behave, what do teachers need. It's a long study, so I'm just going to share a few facts with you to get an idea of what's the deal in the school world, kind of. They were looking at access to computers and internet at home. So I found out that actually 94% of all students have at least one computer at home. It includes tablets or mobile phones that have internet access. 48% of all the students, and the students were 8th graders, they have 3 or more computers at home. So they actually have a lot of access, a lot of touch points with that kind of technology. Computers, yeah, 92% have some form of internet at home. So we can see in their regular life, they have computers, they have access to internet. And they also asked those 8th graders to tell, basically, people who made the study, for how long have they been using computers? So 8th graders. And 33% said for 7 or more years they have been using computers already. And 29 additional percent said for 5 to 7 years. So they've been in touch with computers for a long time, and they've had access to that for a long time. Now, if we look at computer usage at school, how are they actually used there? There are some countries who do very well and some countries who do not so well. Looking at Canada, who was one of the best performing countries, the big white bar basically says how often are computers used every day, and the white bar is computers are used at school every day. So in Canada, 73% of schools use computers as part of the regular learning experience every day. And then basically it goes on at least once a month, at least no, at least once a week, at least once a month, and so on. This is like one country that does it very well, or that uses it a lot. Then there are countries like Denmark or Poland who do not as well as Canada. And then there are some other countries like Germany, where 9.1% basically is where they use it every day. And when you look at the bar, this is here less than a month, and this is kind of never. So we see that more than 25% use it less than once a month. So the situation here is actually not so good if you want to learn something about computers at school. Now we can say, well, if they use it at home all the time, who needs it at school anyways? Well, on the one hand, it's the question of how up-to-date should the learning environment be. But on the other hand, it's also the question of just using something doesn't mean you know how to use it. It doesn't mean that you are actually really enabled to use it. And the study, basically, a quote from the study says, we would be naive to expect students to develop computer information literacy in the absence of coherent learning programs. So that's actually what they found out, is that just because people are exposed to something doesn't mean that you can really, that you really know how to deal with it. So there were some other interesting findings. So basically, one of the main findings, which was shocking and it was all over the kind of education news, is that the young people are not the digital natives we think they are. And the reason is, what I already mentioned, is that it's not just about using something, but you have to relearn how to reflect on it. How do I work with something? How do I really make sense of it? And if school is about learning, and school is about preparing you for real life, and this new thing, the internet, is surrounding us everywhere, then this is something that we should learn at school. I don't think there should be internet classes where you sit down and learn how to use the internet. So it should be integrated, right? It should be really part of the learning experience. It also came out that, of course, knowledge and skills can and should be taught. And one really interesting fact, which has a lot to do with how education works, is that there's a big need to focus on increasing teacher expertise in information and computer technology. And that's kind of coming back to the quote in the first place from my friend. So basically, teachers didn't learn it the way we did. They are often a little bit older. It's not part of their daily life. And it's also really not the idea of pointing fingers and say, all these teachers, because they have all this work that they have to do. And then suddenly there's this new thing, and everybody expects them to know how it works. But of course, that takes time. So when are they supposed to learn it? When are they supposed to do this? So it's really about helping them, enabling them. That's one of the real challenges. And so the question is, how do we get teachers on board? And there's a model that I was recently introduced to at another education event. It's called the will skill tool model. And basically, it means that if you want to get teachers on board, first of all, you have to have the will. You have to have the will of teachers who want to integrate this in their daily classes and their daily education. And that's also one thing that came out in the study, that also in Germany, actually, teachers are really willing to do this. The second thing is that you have to have the skill to actually do that. That's where we have a problem. So if I want to use something but I don't know how to, then the experience breaks. And the last part is I also have to have a tool. So this is, of course, the most important part. That's the most motivation. But then I need somebody to help me to actually use tools, and then I actually need the tools so that I can work with them. And if these three factors are combined, this is then leads to higher frequency of usage of computers, of internet. And this actually helps then students to learn about it and to become, different, maybe better persons in their real life. So why isn't this happening? Why can't we why aren't we doing it nowadays? There are a few challenges that I would like to introduce you to. And one is what I would call the trouble of ownership. One thing that's interesting is that good teachers, a lot of good teachers, are really breaking the law every day because they want to use materials that are up to date. So when you think of, let's say you're an English teacher, and you have the option of, should I take out the English book, which is usually like 8 years old, get a text there and give it to my students, or do I just buy The Economist with a very topical article right here, and I can basically copy it and give it to my students, and they will be much more motivated because it has something to do with their real life. If I do that, if I copy that, then I'm just breaking copyright law. So I'm actually doing something which I'm not allowed to do in order to create great learning experience. So that's one challenge that teachers are facing basically every day. And it's interesting because if we look in other industries, we have this kind of shift from the ownership of media to the access to content. We have seen this in the music industry, where it was in the beginning all about, you buy music on CDs, and now we have services like Spotify where we just access it. It's just there and we can use it. We have seen the same in the movie industry, where it was all about buying DVDs or going to the cinema, and now we have streaming services. So it's not just that we have something new, we also have business models in here that are enriching experiences. And the interesting thing is that today, knowledge is inside of school books, and the question is, where is this going? Because I think this is where it should be going. This is part of the internet where it's about sharing, it's about evolving things rapidly, making things better, and that's where it could and probably should go. So I'm just want to show you a few examples, and as I said, a lot of great services are made in Berlin, so why not mention those? One approach of this kind of access is meinunterricht.de, and the kind of idea is that you have access to proprietary content, but this is high quality content. So they basically, they filter it for you, and they also help you to create your own learning materials. So you have lots of interesting, great content there, and you can mix it yourself. You can create learning materials, and you can give them to your students. There are some people in here who work on this. Whoever works on meinunterricht.de, you just want to raise your hand. Okay. So over there, if you want to learn about this in the networking part, go to Melanie. There's another very similar approach. This is called Skook. Basically, a different publishing houses behind it, but it's a similar idea. High quality content for you that you can choose, that you can build something new out of it. One thing that personally I like a lot is when we think about content, we often talk about something like Creative Commons. And in the education sphere, there's like the Creative Commons for education. It's called OER, which means Open Educational Resources. And there's the idea, like in Creative Commons, that there's content that you can share and that you are also allowed to evolve. Because when you have proprietary content, you're not necessarily always allowed to use it in any way you want or to change it. It's not all the time possible. And that's one service that is currently being developed. It's called Lennox, and that's a platform that wants to help teachers to take all this content that's somewhere out there in the internet and to help people to discover what's really relevant, because that's one challenge with these kind of Creative Commons content, that it's really hard to find what's good because you don't have anybody to tell you whether the quality is high or low, so you have to do all the digging. If you want to learn about this, there's also someone here in the room. So you can talk to that young lady there, so Tana. She's working on that platform. So these are three approaches that are trying today already to change this or to tackle this problem of content and ownership and making actually content accessible. Another challenge is the how to empower teachers, which I mentioned before, and how to also basically provide digital tools maybe to make better education services. Now, if we think about, there are some tech solutions and there are some hurdles, and a lot of things have already been thought about. So for example, I just talked about these computer rooms. It's like, yay, let's have computers at school, but there's the big hurdle of it's not really integrated into the learning. So if you have this, that's one hurdle that we need to overcome, how to actually make this more accessible. This was kind of the 90s. Nowadays, a lot of schools are trying to integrate tablets or laptops and have this as part of school life. There's another hurdle here, just the financial burden, because the problem is that if you buy a tablet now, in 2 years, this tablet is probably going to be pretty old, so you have to buy a new tablet. So for schools, this is a much bigger challenge than it is for any private company, because they have a lot of financial stress, basically, or pressure. Another tech solution that is kind of the idea of changing this up here is the idea of bringing your own device. Why can't every child that already has like a smartphone in their pocket, why can't just they bring their own devices? It's actually a pretty nice idea. A lot of people argue that the problem here is how do you enable inclusion? How do you make sure that not the cool kids have the iPhones and some other kids who can't afford them are going to be bullied on? However, if you talk to teachers, a lot of teachers will tell you that's actually not the case. That's a prejudice that we have that this is going to happen. Students are actually very much willing to share, so to work together on one device if they're allowed to use it. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of schools actually do not allow this. You can't actually, you're not allowed to use the smartphone during class for whatever reason. We saw in the quote in the beginning that one tool that can be provided that can help learning experience are these smart boards. So basically smart boards, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a digital whiteboard. So you have like a projector hanging somewhere here, and you can then kind of draw something, and you can see it, and you can actually do lots of cool stuff with it. However, you have to learn how to deal with it, and many schools have introduced smart boards. Basically, they use it like a projector. They put on a YouTube video there, or if they are able to do, they put in some Word documents on the screen. But the potential that's in these new tools is still untapped because teachers just don't, they have the basic problems like how to put in the cable. And of course, they are a little bit intimidated because if I as a teacher don't know how to do this, and I stand in front of students and they can kind of see that I don't know how to work with it, it's really intimidating for me. So this is where they really need training. And the last one, which is, I think for all of us, an obvious one, but really a lot of schools are struggling with it, is just to have Wi-Fi at schools. Wi-Fi, for those of you who don't know, it is most schools, they don't have it. And one of the reasons for that is that they are facing legal issues. They are afraid of misuse, because there are some schools who did it, who had Wi-Fi for the students. And then what happens is during summer break, when nobody's at school, there are some hack attacks, basically. So some hack bot goes in there and sends millions of spam using their servers. And then they get big legal issues. And because these are not IT experts, they are just teachers who have learned how to teach their subject and not how to deal with IT. This is just a bit too much for them, how to deal with this, how to handle these legal issues. And because they are afraid, a lot of schools do not want to do this or cannot do this. So these are a lot of kind of hurdles or challenges that we are facing when we think about technology at schools, and we think about also empowering teachers. Now, there are also a few services that are trying to tackle these angles or these problems. One of them, for example, is this one. It's called Edkimo. And what they're trying to do using digital tools to empower teachers, it's kind of like a feedback app, like a real-time feedback app for students. So the idea here is that the teacher, because it's one thing, like how do I actually get feedback also as a teacher to have better education services? How do I get feedback? So here the student basically can take out their phone, they can immediately give anonymous feedback to the teacher, and then the teacher afterwards, after his class, knows kind of was this a good class, was it a bad class, what did the students learn here. What's interesting here is the fact that it is anonymous, that you still don't have to register, so it's literally taking it out and doing a quick survey. The young gentleman who works on this is also in the room, I think. He's there, so if you want to learn about that, ask him. Another service which is about empowering teachers is, cheers, it's called Lehrerkolleg. And what they're trying to do, and they're trying to use digital technology to connect teachers who are very motivated. Because we have teachers, yes, who maybe are not so motivated and just want to do it the way they did it. But there are a lot of other teachers who really are motivated. They want to grow, they want to learn, they want to exchange knowledge. And this is like a kind of like a peer-to-peer network for teachers. So when I say, I have a bullying problem at school, in my class, or I don't know how to best teach this specific math problem, they can go on here and find another teacher who basically helps them to develop better lessons, to have better education service. I'm not sure, is anybody in here from Lehrerkolleg? No, okay. So you can't talk to them tonight. But it's a very different approach. So it's not about students, it's just teachers to teachers, basically. So these are all kind of digital services. Of course, I'm not saying like the solution is always digital or you have to have like digital services, but it's about integrating the idea of digital tools into school life, into school reality. This is the website of a school in Düsseldorf, actually, and I recently met the principal of that school. What I found really interesting here is they have a very open learning environment. I think probably similar to here, where here it's really all about being open and having innovation inside. At that school, it's the same. So they had tried many different things. And one thing they do here, for example, they tell the parents, or they recommend the parents that every 8th grader should have their own private laptop. So they get the laptop, they can also learn with teachers at school how to deal with that. But it's not that digital or laptops or computers are the holy grail to everything. So here they say they have to learn it. And once they know how to use it, then they can always, once they're in 10th grade, say, well, this was really nice, but I can learn better when I write my notes by hand, and that's okay. So it's not about pushing digital solutions to everybody. It's not saying you have to use computers. It's about enabling. It's about showing them how it works and then giving them the choice to decide what's my best way of learning, basically. This is kind of like coming from the school. And then I recently met a few students from a school in Berlin. It's called the Leibniz Gymnasium. And what they did is they had lots of students actually came together, kind of like in an innovation workshop, and they thought about how can we improve our school? How can we make education better? And one thing I really liked is that in the end, they produced these little bands here. So it looks like a festival band. So the students, they were so proud of the project. They were so proud of the idea that they are still wearing these. It's like, I've been to the Hurricane Festival. I've been to the Roskilde Festival. No, I'm actually a student of the Leibniz School. And this is a cool school. And I think this is way to go, like motivating also your students, asking them how they want to learn. And as teachers, as adults, be open for that we also have to learn from them and have to kind of understand what they want. That was the second challenge. And the third and the last challenge that I see is that the education environment, the sphere, is really like a multiple stakeholder environment. So for example, in Germany, when we think about it, there's one Germany, but there are already 16 federal states. So when you are a school book publisher, for example, and you want to make a math book for 4th grade, you probably have to do it actually 16 times, because every federal state has their own political agenda. They have their own way of how they want to actually do education, how they want to do school. So you can't just do something for Germany. You have to do something for the single states. And the same is true for education, like educating teachers. Like you actually have to be educated to be able to teach in these different states. So that's just one level of complexity, like the overall thing. And then when you dive a little deeper and you go into these states, it gets even messier. So you have, just to name a few, you have the teachers, the parents, students, politicians, of course. You have the administration, school boards, university, and they're all somehow connected and entangled. So you have teachers who teach, of course, and you have the parents who constantly tell the teachers what they want them to do, how school should be. They want the students to learn, and of course, also they are voters, so they have influence on the politicians. The politicians have influence on the administration, the school board. They are under a lot of pressure, and of course, it all goes on. And what's really interesting is also the role of universities, because when we talk about enabling, and we talk about how can we help teachers to learn and to do better education, it's also a question, how are they educated? And then again, who's basically doing that? So I've talked a lot about, for the other challenges, approaches, potential solutions. And for this section, like the multi-stakeholder one, it's actually an area where I would like to leave a question mark. And this is something what I would like you to think about and to work on, because this is kind of where service design comes in, where there are some handy tools to kind of solve these problems. And one that we would like you to work on today is called the stakeholder map. And that's kind of leading to the exercise part of the evening, where we want you to work on a solution. So we saw that this was all very messy, kind of this environment that I just saw. So the stakeholder map basically is like a people-centered view on an ecosystem. So you kind of look at it from who is involved, who are the stakeholders, and what are their interests. The reason why we do this is it helps us to understand really who affects something, but also who is affected by something. So the active and the passive roles in it. It's a tool that helps you to illustrate relationships and the dependencies, and that's especially in the education system really important. Like who's in there, what are the interests? And how do you do that? It's actually pretty easy. You just start by listing all stakeholders that you can think of, and then you start to annotate the relationships. So who is basically connected to whom? And if you have a specific challenge, which you will have, this kind of helps you to solve that challenge, because you have to understand who is affected and where you can basically start implementing change. In the end, so there are kind of different ways of doing it. It's a very open and free tool, but there are two general structures that you can use if you use a stakeholder map. One kind of looks like this, is like a map of relationships where you have clusters of different kind of stakeholders, and you annotate how they're connected. That's pretty much like I just did on the other slide, in the sketch, where it was all connected. So this is really focusing on the relationships and how people behave. There's another way of doing a stakeholder map, which is also interesting. It looks kind of structurally more like this, where you have something in the center and it kind of moves out. So you put whoever for your challenge is most important in the middle, and the stakeholders who are not so important for a challenge, you kind of put them outside to understand also who do we have to talk first, who do we need to work with in the beginning. That's what we would like you to do in the exercise. And for those of you who haven't been to service design drinks, which were quite a few today, this is the part where you have to stop falling asleep and to start actually be active. So what we would like you to do is to create a stakeholder map that helps you to tackle your challenge. And challenges are on the worksheets that you're about to get. So again, if you think about how to do that, first you brainstorm and you collect all stakeholders. So you put each stakeholder group on a single Post-it, just in one. Then you bring all the stakeholders in order, in an order that helps you to make sense of the entire ecosystem. And once you have the ecosystem figured out, in the third step, you annotate the kind of relationships that they're having. So this person talks to that, this person depends on someone, so that it helps you to understand really what's happening here and how can we solve something. Katrin is moving in. It looks like you want to say something, or no? Okay, all right. So we have worksheets here. Now the question is, if we all sit and who am I going to work with? We just learned that this education sphere, the ecosystem, is all about very, very different kind of people. So what we would like you to do is to find a group of 5 people or 6. And the idea is people that you have not seen before, that you have not worked with. And if you have seen everybody in the room already, then find the people who are the most different to you in terms of experience, in terms of outfit, whatever. So find a group of 5 somewhere in the room with the people who are here, and then you come to this young lady here, and we have worksheets here. So we give one worksheet to each group. We have Post-its and pens, and then we'd like you to see how to tackle the challenge. It's a short one, so you have 10 minutes for this exercise. So go. Ja, die haben alles. Stifte, Post-its, einfach. Nehmt euch, weiß ich nicht, 4 Stifte oder 3 Stifte und so einen kleinen Stapel Post-its. So viele braucht man nicht.
Wir haben hinten noch.
Es gibt auch Wände da hinten. Oder so eine Wand hier, genau.
Manuel, ich wollte noch schnell Hallo sagen. Servus.
Hi, hallo, wie geht's dir?
Gut,
Ja?
gut geht's mir.
Schön, dass du
Und
da bist.
selber?
Auch gut.
Lustig, dass ihr hier On Education macht und dann am Wochenende die Class auch On Alternative Education.
Stimmt, genau,
so.
genau.
Bei denen ist es ja noch
ein bisschen breiter irgendwie
ja,
so, ne?
Ja, genau. Mega spannend. Ja. Ich bin Education, das ist voll das spannende Thema, schon immer.
Ich habe so ein bisschen,
richtig geil.
Ich habe so ein bisschen von einem Jahr so für mich entdeckt und
Ja.
ich finde es auch super interessant.
Ja, total spannend.
Es ist eben echt komplex so.
Ja.
Es gibt so viele Leute, die da irgendwie dazugehören.
Und ich glaube, dieses, was du auch angesprochen hast mit dem Bürokratischen, ist halt auch krass, weißt du, diese Mühle, die dann irgendwie ins Rollen kommen muss. Und
the school. Who had this as a topic? D! Come on! Andre! It's your stage for 1 minute.
Okay, so we realized it was very difficult.
Can you just
We realized it was very difficult.
before you actually wrong one. Before you start, because we had 3 different challenges, do you just want to briefly read out the challenge?
Yeah, okay. So free Wi-Fi at our school, this is kind of what Manuel already said before. We're a group of parents that wants to have free Wi-Fi at our children's school. Mostly we want our kids to be able to use it for research, and the school administration is a bit afraid of the potential legal consequences in case of misuse by externals who can hack themselves into the Wi-Fi. Some parents are concerned about the websites their children will be able to visit, and we're not sure who else might have concerns, so maybe it's a good idea to think about more supporters as well. So we tried to create this stakeholder map. We did the cluster version, trying to group clusters of groups of people together. So at the very middle, we put parents and the students together who want the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we had a very tiny paper, like everybody. But we put like students and parents kind of together, and then we grouped as well the school management, teachers, and the IT admin view that might exist in the school, or maybe not.
And the relationship between them was that there was demand and provide kind of situation where parents and students wanted the Wi-Fi and the other groups needed to provide it to them, or were hoping to be able to provide it to them.
Then we had the developed hackers who are kind of feared by the school management and the school organization because of the legal consequences that they can experience from the cats.
The cats came in at the last minute because they're always involved in the internet.
And the content owners, and there might be also some kind of a security people and boards and advisors who can actually like offer maybe legal advice in the positive direction, not suing but helping as a service. We also had the cable ISPs, basically the internet providers who also offer and are being contracted by the school, so they're definitely involved in there as well. And then we have the so-called ominous political people who kind of are involved in everything and nothing at the same time, because they're basically maybe contacted by parents, maybe by some kind of parent boards and so on, but also by the content owners, so they have to kind of create regulation.
The very last thing that we really couldn't decide where to put was there was someone who needed to make some moral decision about what kids could access over this Wi-Fi. Should it be the parents, or should it be the teachers, or should it be the school board, or the German education board, or what, or some other group of people that should make the decision. So that was kind of interesting that we just stuck in the middle there somewhere. We didn't find an answer.
And one question, besides the actual content, was there anything that was challenging by using the tool, or anything that was very helpful that you could share, like in terms of the approach that you took?
About making this stakeholder map.
Yeah.
I suppose that it was really challenging to just identify all these different relationships, and there's so many different relationships between different people that you can almost draw lines between everything. But I suppose you have to decide which relationships are the most important ones for your problem that you're trying to solve. And even we had trouble deciding what to put really at the center. Was it the school, because they're the ones that might have the problem with the legal issues? Was it the students, were they really getting the benefit from the Wi-Fi? Was it the parents because they wanted to get the Wi-Fi? Anything to add?
The paper was too small.
Okay.
No, I think that's exactly it. Like you really have to identify beyond the borders that are obvious, and it's hard to prioritize.
Okay.
Like it really needs some kind of a research to actually find out who's the decision maker in this whole thing.
Okay, thank you.
This was way beyond 1 minute. But it was quite a detail. So, who wants to talk next about the smart board? Who had the smart board as a topic? Hands up. Yes, there's some hands, please. Yeah. It's the Australian side today. And 1 minute.
have here our stakeholder map. Of course, we started with the pupils.
What was the challenge again?
It's about the smart board.
Do you still have, can you quickly read it out?
Okay, you say about the challenge,
Yeah.
to read out the challenge, to get the smart board within a year to one school, basically. So we started with the pupils and the teachers who have the strongest relationship. So the teachers would see the need of the smart board in the first place. And the teachers would communicate this to the parents, and the parents also the needs of the teachers and of the pupils, sorry. And then we have, of course, the educational politician and then the school board. We have the facility managers, board manufacturers, entrepreneurs, and NGOs. So we thought that the most important ones from here are definitely these two ones, teachers and students, but also the school board who would take the decision about whether they get the board or not. And we thought that in the case that there would be issues in relation to that, since we're talking about one school, then maybe they could talk with some kind of NGO to help them to raise funding to get money for buying the boards to the manufacturers. And am I missing something? No. Yeah, I think that this is basically it.
Okay, we have the entrepreneurs who maybe will develop some apps or something that will run on smartboard actually. And yeah, I think the most difficult thing was that we first wrote down the statement of the NGOs. I said we don't need it, and then basically it came out that it's really important because maybe some Lehrerförderverein or something will basically give money. So it was quite a good idea actually. So yeah.
So, thank you very much. Okay, so and the last topic and track was bringing your own device policy. Who had this as a topic? Be so shy. Hands up. So, I mean, that's a gentleman. Yes. You're gonna get some quite active ladies in your group. Like, come on, get these. Come on. Oh yeah. You can bring that table. Come on. Okay,
Just bring it on. Bring it on.
Dear internet audience, they really make some effort to make it visible to us. Please appreciate that, dear internet audience.
So, Lucas? So me?
So we've got these young teachers which want to use the mobile devices at school, and but the school doesn't have money, so
Because they want internet, wants here, so I have to use both at the same time. Yeah.
So, I think our task was a bit difficult because we had to map the stakeholders who were either supporting to bring in the mobile devices and the ones who were concerned about it. So we kind of got lost in the discussions what the stakeholder or possible stakeholders might be. So we kind of mapped. So the inner circle is basically the teachers, students, and parents who are mostly in favor of bringing in the mobile devices because they might actually benefit from it. And then around that, we identified that future employees might actually be interested in yeah, changing the policy that students can actually bring their mobile phone devices. Then we said the school definitely needs an IT department. So they might be, I don't know, indecisive whether they're actually in favor or not, because they might have more work to do. But then on the other side, I don't know what we decided actually on that one. But yeah, anything else you can think of? Yes, there might be social workers who might be against it because they have to maybe deal with the students who are more stressed out, or yeah, who have to deal with the change in behavior. Then we said mobile device providers might actually really like the idea of having more mobile phone devices. Then tech companies probably going to support it. Yeah, that's it. We didn't really clarify the relationships any further.
No, I agree.
Thank you so much. This is fun. Manuel, do you have some takeaways for us?
I do. I think I have one.
Okay.
So I have, whoops. Yeah. So the takeaways, which are one of the few things between you and more beer from the day, are basically one way to approach this challenge in general. And the other takeaways, takeaways, like the key ones are that students are not as computer literate as one might think. Second, the teacher's expertise needs to be improved. Third is that the access of learning materials, so this kind of content, also needs to be improved, so how they can access it. And to solve education challenges, we need to manage stakeholders much better and approach them that way. So now, basically, that input to a tool, you did a little bit of innovation, and if some of you want to do a lot of innovation, a lot of using design tools, and I think Dee and Melanie, and maybe somebody else in the room, want to introduce you to a workshop that's going to happen very soon, so come up on stage and let the audience know how to do more innovation.
We don't need the other one. Okay, who here has heard of a service jam? Who's been to one? Okay, so for those that haven't, event actually called the Global Service Jam that happens every year, and all around the world in different cities the event happens on the same weekend. And so in Berlin it's going to be the Service Jam Berlin. So on this weekend, on the 27th of February to 1st of March, so it's a Friday evening to a Sunday afternoon, we're going to have a service jam. Woo! Yay. Woo!
Yeah, so we go through different tools, exactly like we did tonight. This was the Stakeholder tool. We'll go through a whole bunch of different tools. We've got 5 awesome coaches coming from companies all around Berlin. We've got 3 or 4 awesome guest speakers who are going to grace us with their presence and have real input talks to us. And it's quite amazing to see the breadth and depth of talent that will be there. And this is a place where you get to try as many new tools and new ways of deciding things as you can. Yeah. Who's had a really great time at a jam before?
Woohoo!
So some people maybe will cancel, so there probably will be some more that will become available, but there's really not many places left. And it will be hosted also at ISDS, that we'd like to thank for actually providing the venue and some materials and their kitchen that we'll use. So also there is a ticket price, which is interesting to mention because there is a price. But it's because we provide breakfast, so beers on the first night and dinner, and then breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all these days, so we all can just stay in this one venue and hang out together and really connect and work really well together. So yeah, thank you to ISDS for that. Okay, yeah.
All right, one more thing, which is, yeah, So, in the past 2 years, we've been doing a little conference, which was a bit of a different conference because it was way more interactive than regular conferences. And we just decided, after some of you asked us if we do it again, and said, yes, we're going to do the service experience camp again. But moving it a tiny bit from September, which we did the last 2 years, to this time November. So this will be great way to close the year, and we just want to let you in advance. It will be interactive conference with top-notch speakers. It will be interactive sessions. There will be bar camps which you can provide content for, and early bird tickets I think will come soon. So that's about it, I think. And please have a beer now. Thank you.
Willst du nochmal weiter mit hochführen? Ja? Willst du nochmal weiter mit hochführen? Oder? Ja. Okay, alles klar. Können wir Musik anmachen? Das wäre ja, okay. Ja, also, sag ich jetzt mal.
Ist das Wasser leer?
Fast, aber nicht ganz.
Don't forget to let them know that you want the night. It's a great.